What's up guys, Andrew Baena here, and on today's video I'm going to be going through how I record and mix screamed vocals. Before we get started, I want to make one thing very clear. This is not a screaming tutorial or a how to do vocals video. That's not what this is at all, so if that's what you're looking for, feel free to stop watching right now. What this is going to be is how to record your vocals and how I personally mix them. Of course, mixing vocals is a thing that is constantly changing for me as I get new plugins and whatnot, but this is how I currently do it at this point in time. So I'm going to be going through an example which is from my Trump Goes Deathcore video that I released last week. You can get that on Spotify and Apple Music as well if you are interested. Those will be linked in the description below. You can also get all the individual audio stems so you can hear everything I'm going to do in better quality on my Patreon, which is also linked below. If you're interested in that, go check that out as well. So first and foremost, what I want to say is to record vocals, what I'm using is a Shure SM7B microphone. It's a pretty industry standard mic. I would highly recommend this mic if you are doing any type of extreme metal vocals. A lot of people recommend that you put this in something called a cloud lifter, which basically just raises the signal from my understanding, but I personally don't need it because with my vocal style, when I scream, I'm actually literally fucking screaming, so it's very, very loud, so I actually don't need any boost on my input signal, if that makes any sense. So yeah, basically it's just a Shure SM7B that's going straight into a Steinberg UR44 interface, and I also have this little vocal shield thingy surrounding the SM7B to hopefully get rid of a little bit of the ambient room noise, because I am in an untreated room, so that helps me a little bit. So to record and mix everything, I use a program called Reaper. This is the exact same program I use for all of my instruments as well. And basically what I do when I start a session is I essentially have at least 3 tracks dedicated to vocals. So you can see on my screen here, I have Vox main, Vox back, and then this one, which I didn't name, but it's actually just the Vox effects, I guess you could call it, which is basically just like the extra vocals that kind of sit behind. You'll see what I mean in a second. Yeah, and basically what I do is I record on one of these layers and then I move it to the appropriate track afterwards. So that's a very quick and dirty explanation of how I record vocals in terms of the layout of my studio and my workflow. So basically what I do to record vocals is I do them one line at a time. People will, I'm sure, argue about this. If you're good enough to do a song in one take, congratulations, you're the best. I'm very happy for you. So I usually start with the main vocals. Obviously, it just makes more sense. It's easier to do backing vocals after the main vocal line is recorded. So essentially what I'll do is record one line at a time, like I was saying. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that with no effects. So it would basically sound something like this. So it would be... So there you go. It obviously sounds awful because there are no effects applied, but as you can see, like this was one take, the first line, second take, third take, fourth take, and then the blow was a 5th take. So for this, what is that, 10 seconds of music? There's actually 5 takes there. So again, if you can do more lines than in one breath, by all means feel free to do that, but I prefer to do it this way. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I would do, and I do that pretty much throughout the whole song. So every place where you can see a cut like this is just a different take. Yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory, I feel like. And then after I'm finished the main vocals, then I'll move on and do the backing vocals, which I just do the exact same thing for, and I'll show you what that sounds like. So as you can see in this example, the main vocals are doing like kind of a high thing and the background vocals are doing a low. So when you put them together, it sounds like this. I'm going to turn the effects back on so you can actually hear what's going on. No collusion, no obstruction, no exoneration, So yeah, as you can see, the main vocals are obviously way louder and it's mostly driven by that high scream, but then there's a low kind of filling out the background. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the recording process. It's very, very simple. There's not much to it. Record line by line, have 2 tracks minimum, 1 for backgrounds, 1 for leads. And that's pretty much it. That's all you really need to do to record vocals, in my opinion, or at least that's what I do. But yeah, now I'm going to show you guys how I actually mix this stuff. So we're going to start with the main vocals. In this particular instance, I was using the Artifact Suite by Solemn Tones. I don't really know if this video is sponsored by Solemn Tones, but I'm just going to put a little disclaimer here. I do get these plugins for free because I am endorsed by this company. They're not paying me to say this though, so I don't know if that really counts as a sponsored ad or not, but full disclosure, that's the way it is, just so you guys know. So first up, I'm gonna show you guys what the vocals sound like with no effects at all. This is gonna sound awful and pretty embarrassing, but all vocals sound bad when there's no effects on it, in my opinion. So here's how it sounds with nothing applied.
No collusion, no obstruction, total exoneration, Democrat witch hunt.
So that's with nothing applied, and then with everything applied.
No collusion, no obstruction, total exoneration, Democrat witch hunt.
So much better, obviously. So I'm gonna go through what I do one by one. So first and foremost, I use a plugin called Beast, once again by Solemn Tones. Basically what this does is it adds a bunch of overtones to your voice. Essentially, it's almost like having like multiple layers of pitch shifting going on at once. I use the monster preset, which, you know, basically makes you sound like a monster. This one's pretty simple. It's got a low cut, high cut. I don't use those at all. I just leave them alone. There's different modes like Serpent, Imp, Monster, and Beast, which just give you different overtones if you want to use those. I personally use Monster, and I have the mix set at like, what is that, like 40% or something like that, 45%, I don't know. But yeah, so you can hear the difference like so.
No collusion, no obstruction, total exoneration, Democrat witch hunt.
So it might be a little hard to hear since the volume is kind of low, but we'll bring that up in the next step, which is the Solemn Tones Smash, which is basically just an extreme compressor. So it adds smash, which is compression, and gain. I have the smash pretty high, that's probably like 85%. And then the gain is just in the middle, and then I have the mix at 100%, so I'm not using any of the dry signal, I'm only using the compressed signal. And I have this after the Beast plugin because I personally like compressing the vocals after they have been processed with that weird pitch shifting effect, and that will bring the volume way up, which is why the volume appears to be so low when there's no effects going on. You'll see what I mean right now.
No collusion, no obstruction, total exoneration, Democrat witch hunt.
And now since I have that smash effect applied, I'll show you the Beast one again just because you can actually hear it. So again, this is the dry vocals with only smash applied, and then I'm going to be turning on and off the Beast plugin.
No collusion, no obstruction, total exoneration, Democrat.
So yeah, as you can hear, it just adds a little bit of overtones like I was saying. Next up is the Room plugin, again by Solemn Tones. This one is just like a delay and reverb effect. I'm using the big room setting. There's multiple ones like small plate, medium plate, and so on and so forth. I like big room. Pretty standard for a reverb plugin. You can mix your wet and dry. I have the dry at 50% and the wet at like 40 to 35%. Again, there's a low cut and a high cut. I didn't use it personally. And basically this just adds reverb and delay, and it'll sound something like this.
No collusion, no obstruction, total exoneration, Democrat witch hunt.
Yeah, so pretty self-explanatory, adds delay and reverb, sounds much better instead of a dry-ass scream. Last but not least, I have a plugin called FabFilter ProQ, which is just an EQ plugin. You can use anything you want. This is the one that I personally like. So I do a couple things here. So I have like a, what is this, a low cut at 40 hertz because I don't want anything past 40 hertz in my mix anyways. And then next up I have a low shelf at 70 hertz, again just trying to get rid of a lot of that low stuff. And then I have an extreme cut at, where is this, at 80 hertz because that's where all of my sub bass frequencies are, and I just get rid of that completely so that my kick drum and my bass sit in that frequency range and there's just no vocals at all. And then I have another big cut at the 500 hertz range because that's the primary area where my guitars are. So I get rid of a lot of vocals in this area to let the guitars poke through there. And then last but not least, as everyone knows, 4 kilohertz sounds like shit usually, so I just get rid of that completely as well in my vocals. So that's pretty much it for my main vocal chain. So once again, it sounds like this with all the effects applied.
No collusion, no obstruction, total exoneration, Democrat witch hunt.
Alright, next up we'll go to the background vocals. So this is kind of similar to what I do for the main vocals, except with obviously way less volume. So you can hear right away it's going to be way quieter. I'll show you guys what it sounds like with all the effects applied.
No collusion, no obstruction, total exoneration, Democrat witch hunt.
So yeah, pretty much same process, except it's way more airy, way more reverby, and also just way quieter. I also have it, I think, a little bit wider so that it sits on the side of the main vocal rather than going in the center, if that makes sense. So yeah, basically what I do for this is number one, same thing. I use Beast once again. This time I have it on the imp setting just to give it slightly different overtones than the main vocal line. The mix is a little higher at like just above 50. Once again, low cut, high cut are not really used for me. Next up, I actually use an Easy Mix 2 preset, which is called Large Choir Spread, which basically just adds a shit ton of reverb and chorus. I have both dials at max. Pretty self-explanatory once again. I could probably use the Room plugin for this, but I don't know, for some reason I decided to use this one. I just thought it kind of sounded better. Next up, I use Side Widener. Like I was saying, basically what I do is I crank the width up. So once again, basically what this does is it makes the background vocals wider so that it's not dominating the center of the mix so much, because the center of the mix is very much used for the main vocal line. So with the Side Widener, it kind of pushes it a little bit to the left and right, giving more room for the main vocals. And then I just have the tone knob at full because I don't know, I just thought it sounded better. Once again, sorry by the way if I say anything that sounds kind of unprofessional. I'm not fully trained in mixing and mastering at lingo. A lot of this is just me kind of guessing at what to do and watching other people's YouTube tutorials and just doing what I thought sounds best. Yeah, and then last but not least is once again Fab Filter ProQ, the exact same EQ settings as the main vocals. In hindsight, maybe it would be better to do something slightly different here, but I personally don't do that, as I use the same vocal EQ chain here, which is again the low pass is at 40 hertz, 70 hertz, low cut at 80, mid cut at 500, and then super high cut at 4 kilohertz. So with no effects applied, it's going to sound very quiet, so I'm just going to crank the volume a bit so you can hear it dry.
No collusion, no obstruction, total exoneration, democratic witches.
And then with everything applied,
No collusion, no obstruction, total exoneration, democratic witches.
Alright guys, so that pretty much does it for this tutorial. Hopefully you found it useful. I, again, apologize if I'm not using the most professional mixing and mastering terminology. Once again, I don't actually know what I'm doing in terms of technical terms. I'm not like trained on recording, mixing, and mastering. This is all stuff I've kind of figured out for myself, whether it be from other YouTube tutorials or just clicking things until I think it sounds good. Once again, if you're interested in the Solemn Tones plugins, you can find more info about those in the description below. I also have a discount code, and you can get 15% off if any of those plugins interested you. Again, shout out to Solemn Tones for hooking me up with these plugins. I think they sound fucking awesome. But yeah, that'll pretty much do it for this video. Once again, I hope you found it useful. Again, if you want to explore the stems, the audio stems for this, you can get those on my Patreon, which is linked below. I think that's pretty much all I have to say. So once again, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I look forward to hearing your vocal covers.